Every time I order a pizza, I get that slight feeling of guilt, but not because I'm counting calories or anything. Hi, my name is Dilip Kumar, and I'm obsessed with the questions. What does it mean to achieve sustainability, and how can we practically do this as a society? It started when I was a kid. My father worked in the forest department. This meant that I literally grew up living opposite beautiful green jungles. I was also very conscious growing up of things like the hole in the ozone layer, air pollution created by vehicles, and their impact on the environment. I remember the slight feeling of guilt I had when I graduated from the bicycle and drove my first petrol vehicle. Somehow, even as an adult, that feeling of guilt when I consume something has never quite left me. The truth is, I want to be a much more quote unquote sustainable person, whatever that means, but I find it really, really hard sometimes. How many of you can relate to this? To start my personal transition to sustainability, I might begin by making an inventory of every action I take over the course of 24 hours in a day. I start the day by brushing my teeth. What is the sustainability impact, for want of a better term, of the water I use and the foam produced, of producing the toothbrush and the toothpaste I use? Later in the day, when I order pizza for lunch, what is the sus impact, factoring in the petrol spent and the GHG emissions of getting it delivered to the office where I work? I could continue inventorying my activities throughout the day. I put together this talk on a laptop manufactured in several different countries and finally imported into India from China. What is the sus impact of producing this laptop and my using it? It's clear that evaluating this sus impact as an individual and a consumer is a computationally intensive and non-trivial task. For example, I'd need to break the laptop down to its thousands of component parts and ask myself about their sus impact. Where were they created? From what materials? With how much energy and water and other resources? And where were they transported to? Etc. You might think that the sus impact of brushing teeth is easier to answer, but consider that the water in my city might have been pumped with a leakage of more than 50% from a dying river 100 kilometers away, using electricity generated by a mix of solar energy and coal fired power plants. How do I measure the impact of such a complex process? And when calculating the sus impact of delivering pizza, how do I factor in the sus impact of manufacturing the vehicle which is used to deliver the food? Or even of importing the cheese used on the pizza? Another question I might ponder when trying to understand my impact on the planet might be, who makes the decisions which determine my sus impact? Given that I am an average human being who wears clothes, likes ordering pizza, etc., and not an ascetic monk in the Himalayas. The answer might include corporations, government, and myself. Who could be the others? Let's zoom in on corporations. The sus impact of the toothbrush and the toothpaste I use depends on the decisions made by its designers in the company that manufactured it. Similarly, for the laptop I use. These decision makers might or might not be thinking of my sus impact when they create their products. In fact, there's a good chance that they are taking their decisions based on a whole host of considerations, like the competition in the marketplace, the cost of materials, the availability of suppliers, the preferences of the consumer, and other factors. There are, then, literally thousands of decisions being made by people you and I have never seen, which determine how the products you and I can choose from, use, and consume are created, transported, consumed, disposed, reused, etc., which determines the sus impact created by you and me. We're implicated in this system of production and consumption. I'd like to leave you with this idea. For me to be sustainable, personal action is insufficient. Corporations need to make sustainable choices. Corporations famously operate in their self-interest, or so the theory goes. The logical question might be, what incentivizes corporations to make sustainable choices? One way to answer this question is from the perspective of risk and its mitigation. While corporations might not be intrinsically concerned with sustainability or the climate crisis, they certainly need to be acutely aware of the risks associated with these. The study of climate and sustainability risk to business is an area of active and intense ongoing research. The risks themselves can be categorized of several types: physical, reputational, regulatory, transitional, and so on. Different risks are material to different extents based on what type of industry or company you're looking at. A company that is extracting large amounts of groundwater to develop food products is under risk if it is operating in a water-stressed area. a company that is dependent on fossil fuel energy sources in its value chains is under risk from imminent policy shifts towards clean energy. A company might even be at risk of losing its social license to operate if it is seen as polluting the environment. The pressure is mounting on companies and their leaders to commit to sustainability. Much of this is coming from investors who, by nature of their work, look at risk versus reward over the longer term. This manifests in initiatives such as the Carbon Disclosure Project, an investor consortium representing almost 90 trillion US dollars that pushes for disclosures and reporting on various aspects of sustainability by companies. And in India, new mandates have arisen, requiring top listed companies to disclose much more information under business responsibility and sustainability reporting. With increasing open disclosure becoming the norm, companies will soon have to face much more scrutiny as third-party research and analysis based on this data further affects their brand perception in the marketplace. How well does company X perform on various aspects of environment, social and governance, or ESG against others in its category? All this means that corporations must now, in their legitimate self-interest, become much more sustainable, quote unquote. In doing so, however, they face some challenges. While companies might be really good at innovating to develop core products, shoes, automobile parts, whatever, they are probably not so good at innovating to address their emergent SaaS challenges. Would a hospital be really good at innovating to reduce its energy footprint? Or a beverages company in innovating to reduce impact of its packaging? How should we, as a society, respond to the need for innovation for the corporate sustainability transition? The big idea I think is worth spreading is that as a society, we must develop and enrich ecosystems to accelerate the corporate sustainability transition. In this approach, the corporate SUS needs are sensed, externalized, and solved for within an entire ecosystem of solution partners. You can think of the ecosystem as a sustainability accelerator for corporates. This ecosystem of solutions is already starting to emerge in the Indian context and matching to corporate SUS needs. I have seen heartening examples of the synergies and collaboration. You might call it how to do business with positive externalities that emerge as a result when companies forsake models of cutthroat competition at all costs in favor of creative collaboration and leveraging. For example, an energy efficiency company I know introduced one of its key customers, a hospital, to a water intelligence platform, which then did such a good job that the hospital became an outstanding case study for water conservation in the Indian context. There are many more examples, especially from the COVID pandemic times, when partnerships had to be formed between companies in order to keep business going through lockdown restrictions. The ecosystem approach also allows for applying the principles of systems thinking, identifying leverage points that will allow for the most impact to be created for the interventions. I have seen this play out in practice. By engaging the most powerful and influential globalized corporates within the ecosystem, sensible SUS decisions for the Indian context can be taken in partnership with the knowledge and leveraging the intellectual capital embedded in the ecosystem. This can then flow down into the value chains of the private corporates, where there may be hundreds or thousands of medium and small scale enterprises which can transition to circularization and sustainability following the mandate from their key customers. This is much more effective than trying to change the SUS decision making of each individual MSME in the country. The ecosystem approach allows for solutions to be created as a shared resource of industry. For example, leading corporates in India are now running open challenges, calls for sustainability innovation, where the winners get to implement pilot projects with them and are accelerated through equity-free grants. In closing, I'd like to leave you with the key takeaways and a question for you to think of. For individuals to be sustainable, personal action is insufficient. Corporations need to make sustainable choices. Corporations must also, in their legitimate self-interest, become much more sustainable going forward. And finally, ecosystems must be developed and enriched to allow for externalization of innovation to accelerate the corporate sustainability transition. I'd like to leave you with the question: wherever you are in the system, what can you do to support this movement? Whether through volunteering, investing in the ecosystem, engaging as a corporate, or developing a solution. How can you support the ecosystem that one day may contain 100 climate unicorns that will solve for the sustainability problem? Thank you.